The applause had barely begun when the microphone screeched, cutting through the joy like a blade. "You're embarrassing this family," my Uncle Craig's voice thundered across the stadium. "Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin." I froze. My cap tilted slightly as I turned my head, slow as stone, and saw him standing by the mic stand, gripping it like it owed him something. "She cleaned toilets to pay for this degree," he barked, laughter breaking out in the section where most of my relatives sat. Aunt Lisa covered her smirk with a fake cough. My cousin Blake howled like he was watching a sitcom. And now she thinks she deserves applause? I didn't say a word. I didn't blink. My hands curled around my graduation folder, shaking, but not from fear. From control. I refused to give them my tears. But then, just before another insult could leave his mouth, the dean stepped back to the mic, raised a hand, and said calmly, "We have a special guest here today." The crowd murmured. My family looked confused. Then came the sound of shoes on polished tile. Click, click, click. I knew those footsteps. And when I turned my head, I saw him. Dark suit. Silver cufflinks. Calm, calculated power in every step. My husband, Nathaniel Cole, CEO of the fastest rising investment firm on the East Coast, walked onto the stage, eyes locked on me. The crowd gasped. My uncle stepped back, as if hit by a wave. Nathaniel took my hand gently and turned to face the crowd. "She didn't just clean toilets," he said, voice rich and firm. "She worked every day and night while most people her age gave up after one failed exam. She didn't ask for help. She earned this. And this woman, my wife, graduated top of her class in biochemistry while running 2 jobs and taking care of her disabled neighbor." Silence. A heavy, embarrassed silence. My aunt's jaw was slack. Blake's laugh had died mid-giggle. Nathaniel turned to me, kissed my hand, and whispered, "Let's show them what real success looks like." I smiled for the first time in minutes. But that was just the beginning, because they had mocked me for years. And now? Now I was done staying quiet. We left the stage hand in hand, but I could feel every eye drilling into my back. The ceremony ended, the caps flew, and cameras flashed, but all I saw were those stunned faces. And I wasn't done with them. Not yet. Outside the venue, the family swarmed like hornets. Uncle Craig stormed toward us, red-faced and loud. "What kind of game are you playing, Riley? You marry some rich guy and think it erases who you really are?" I turned slowly. My voice, when it came, was calm. "And who do you think I really am, Uncle Craig?" "A janitor," he spat. "A nobody from the gutter. You cleaned bathrooms in high school. You lived in a trailer, for God's sake." I didn't flinch, but Nathaniel stepped closer, jaw tight. "I chose her," he said coolly. "Not because of where she came from, but because of what she survived." Craig laughed bitterly. "You really think her sob story makes her worth something?" "I know it does," Nathaniel snapped. "And, by the way about that trailer? She bought the land it was on, renovated it, rented it out. She owns 3 properties now, including a duplex in Boston." Their silence was louder than their insults. "And while you were mocking her," Nathaniel added, "she was investing." Aunt Lisa's voice broke through. "You're lying. She's just pretending." Riley was always the weak one. I looked her dead in the eye. "Was I?" I said, "Because I remember you calling Mom selfish when she got sick. I remember scrubbing motel floors at 14 just to pay for her insulin while you took vacations to Cancun." Lisa blanched. "That's not." "You stood at her funeral and said, 'She should have tried harder to stay alive.'" My voice cracked, but I didn't look away. "And then you laughed at me when I said I was applying for college. You all did." No one spoke. Nathaniel took out his phone. "I think it's time they see what you've been doing while mocking my wife." He tapped play on a video. On screen, security footage from a country club. Uncle Craig, slipping a gold watch into his pocket. Aunt Lisa, screaming at a server. Blake, passed out in his car with a DUI ticket on the dash. Did you really think money would protect you from accountability? Nathaniel said, still polite, still calm. We're not here to threaten. But you should understand something. He stepped forward. She doesn't need to prove anything to people who couldn't even carry her past. I met my uncle's stunned glare. You tried to humiliate me in front of the world. You wanted me to feel ashamed. But I'm not. Because the girl who cleaned toilets is the same woman who owns your mortgage. What? Craig blinked. I bought your house last month. Through a holding company. Check your next payment notice. And just like that, he staggered. Riley, he breathed. You wouldn't. I smiled. But there was still more. He looked pale. Uncle Craig's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Aunt Lisa clutched her pearls like she'd just seen a ghost. My cousin Blake stepped back as if he could somehow melt into the sidewalk. But I wasn't done. You bought my house? Craig's voice cracked. That's not legal. That can't be legal. Nathaniel spoke, calm and crisp. Perfectly legal. You defaulted on your second mortgage months ago. Riley made the winning bid through a shell company because she knew you'd never sell to her directly. But why? Lisa croaked. What kind of twisted person does this to family? I tilted my head, slowly. The kind of person who begged you to stop mocking her for 10 years and was laughed at every time. The kind of person who watched her mother die while you all drank champagne 3 miles away and refused to answer your phones. The kind of person who cleaned motel bathrooms while you told everyone I was off chasing fantasies. Nathaniel's hand slid into mine. You said I was embarrassing the family, I continued. But you are the family shame. You're not cruel because you're hurt. You're cruel because you're empty, and hurting people made you feel important. Lisa's lips trembled. Where are you going with this? Blake snapped. You made your point. So what now? You just humiliate us and walk away. I turned to him, eyes like steel. No, I said. You humiliated me for years. Today, I'm freeing myself from your narrative. Nathaniel turned to the small crowd that had gathered near the gates, a mix of former classmates and faculty watching from a distance, murmuring. Let's get to the car, I said, brushing my gown back. That's when a black car, not Nathaniel's usual ride, rolled into view. An understated Rolls-Royce. It stopped. The driver stepped out and opened the door. An older woman with warm eyes and a walking cane stepped out. My grandmother. Gram? Blake said in disbelief. She gave them all a long, sad look. I stayed quiet for too long. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. I changed my will last year, she said, handing it directly to me.
Lisa gasped.
Mom, what are you talking about? I gave Riley control of my estate. Everything. The land, the business shares, the savings. I watched all of you mock her while she worked harder than anyone. You thought she was the failure of this family. But she's the only reason this family still has a chance at redemption. Uncle Craig stepped forward, but Gram held up her cane like a sword. Don't, she said, her voice suddenly firm. You've taken enough from her. I opened the envelope, inside a notarized declaration and keys. To the house by the lake, Gram said. Your mother's favorite place. Yours now. Nathaniel whispered into my ear. This is the moment they realize they never broke you. I took one final breath and looked them all in the eye.
This isn't revenge, I said.
It's restoration. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm just done pretending you ever mattered. And with that, I turned my back. But behind me, I heard it. The sound of reality shattering. Whispers. Regret. Silence. The sound of our heels on the pavement felt louder than the chaos behind us. Like a final drum roll before a curtain dropped on a play no one would ever dare stage again. We reached the car. Nathaniel opened the door for me with a gentle nod. But before I could step in, I turned back one last time. Because even though I'd said my piece, I could see it in their faces. They still thought this was about the money.
The car.
The husband. The estate. They hadn't grasped the real weight of what had just happened. So I walked back toward them, slowly. Uncle Craig stood stiff, his pride crumbling. Lisa was dabbing her eyes, playing victim now that the power had shifted. Blake had crossed his arms, his eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. He was still clinging to the illusion that he could talk his way out of this. "You know what hurts the most?" I said softly, loud enough for all of them to hear. "It's not the way you mocked me, or laughed when I came home smelling like bleach and sweat. It's that every time I achieved something, anything, you told me I didn't deserve it, that it was luck, that it was cute, that it wouldn't last. Because it was embarrassing," Craig hissed. "You showing up to family dinners in that old uniform, acting like it was normal to work 3 jobs. "I was normal," I interrupted, voice sharper now. "You were the ones faking it, maxing out cards to keep up with country club appearances, hiding bankruptcies behind fake LLCs. Craig, you've refinanced your house 5 times. Blake, you sold your car for crypto and told everyone it was a business decision. Lisa, you borrowed my student loan refund once to pay for Botox and told me it was an investment in your public image." Their jaws dropped again. Because I wasn't just speaking emotionally now. I was holding a mirror up. "You all created this narrative where I was the pathetic one, the charity case. But I was the only one not pretending." Silence. Then I looked at my grandmother. "I used to think staying quiet made me mature, that being humble would eventually earn me your respect. But it only made me smaller in your eyes. And I'm done shrinking to make you feel tall." Tears filled Graham's eyes. "I should have spoken up years ago," she whispered. I shook my head. "You're doing it now. That's enough." Suddenly, Lisa stepped forward. "Riley, wait. Maybe we misunderstood you. Maybe we can talk." I stared at her. "You want to talk now?" I asked. She hesitated. "We're family." The word hit like a slap. "No," I said, calm and cold. "We're relatives. That's not the same thing." I turned and walked back toward the car without another glance. The door shut behind me with a soft, final click. Nathaniel reached over and took my hand in the silence that followed. His thumb traced my knuckles gently, a quiet promise of peace. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yeah, just realizing something." "What's that?" For so long, I thought proving them wrong would make me feel better. But it doesn't. What feels better is knowing I didn't turn into them. He gave me that slow, proud smile he always wore when I surprised him. "You turned into someone better. Someone unstoppable." We pulled away from the curb. Behind us, my so-called family stood in stunned silence, faces pale, illusions shattered. Ahead of us, the road stretched wide and open. I rolled down the window, letting the wind rush through my hair. For the first time in years, I breathed freely. No more shrinking. No more silence. No more shame. And as the city skyline came into view, I whispered to myself, "I earned this." 2 weeks later, I stood barefoot on the hardwood floors of my mother's old lake house, now legally mine. Morning sun poured through the glass wall, overlooking the water. The lake shimmered in soft ripples, and a gentle breeze teased the curtains like a whisper from the past. I hadn't cried the day I reclaimed my dignity, but I cried that morning, not because I was broken, but because I was whole. Because after years of humiliation, silence, sacrifice, and rejection, I was finally standing somewhere that felt like mine. And not just on paper, in soul. Nathaniel came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. His voice was quiet. "You didn't just survive them, Riley. You transformed every blow into something beautiful." I leaned into him. "It doesn't feel real." "It is." There was a knock at the front door. I pulled away slowly and opened it to find Graham, her cane in one hand and a soft smile on her lips. "Did I catch you two at a bad time?" she asked gently. "Never," I smiled, hugging her tightly. She walked slowly inside, her eyes sweeping across the familiar living room. "Your mother loved this place. She'd be so proud of you." I swallowed the lump in my throat again. "I hope so." "She would," Graham said firmly. "And Riley, I want to apologize." "You don't have to." "I do." She looked me in the eye. "I watched them belittle you. Watched you carry burdens a girl your age shouldn't have. And I stayed quiet because I didn't want to stir trouble. But that silence, it cost you. And it cost me my peace. I hugged her again. Thank you for speaking up when it mattered. I should have done it sooner. But you were never alone. Not really. We sat on the back deck, the three of us, sipping coffee as the lake glistened. That afternoon, a thick envelope arrived via courier, delivered by hand. I opened it and found legal documents confirming full ownership of my uncle's house. I'd filed the transfer papers the week before, knowing the grace period would expire soon. I held the power to evict him, to destroy him the way he'd tried to destroy me in front of the world. But I didn't. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. He answered with hesitation. Riley, I'm transferring the house back to you, I said plainly. Under one condition. Silence. An apology, I said.
A real one.
Not in private. Not whispered. But in front of the same relatives who laughed with you. I want them to hear it. To know it wasn't me who was ever the disgrace.
He stammered.
Why would you, after everything, why would you do that? Because I don't want to become what you are, Craig.
Petty.
Vengeful. Miserable. And because I didn't fight to win. I fought to rise. He said nothing. I'll expect that apology by Sunday, I added, then hung up. Nathaniel watched me with awe. You just gave away the house. I nodded. I gave away the house, not the power. I still have that. But I'm choosing peace. That Sunday, at a brunch hosted by another relative, Craig stood, awkward, red-faced, and trembling. He looked me straight in the eyes. I mocked Riley when she should have been celebrated. I tried to bury her story because I was ashamed of my own. And I need to say, in front of everyone, I was wrong. You're not a disgrace, Riley. You're the only one among us who never pretended to be something she wasn't. The room was dead silent. Lisa blinked back tears. Blake didn't even meet my gaze. I stood and walked out without saying a word, because I didn't need applause, or cheers, or revenge. They would replay that moment in their minds forever, and that was enough. Months passed. I started my own research foundation named after my mom. Nathaniel and I traveled. We laughed more, slept better, built a life far from the shadows I'd once lived in. And sometimes, late at night, I'd think back to that graduation. The microphone, the laughter,
The shame.
and I'd smile. Because the girl who once cleaned toilets now built scholarships for girls like her. Because the woman who was mocked in public had become a story whispered in reverence. And because every time they'd tried to break me, they'd only taught me how to rebuild. Stronger, wiser, untouchable. And the next time someone said I didn't belong, I'd look them in the eye and say, no, you just didn't recognize who I was becoming.